Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the YADA Selection Committee for letting me present my work during this important event. I hope that the audience will enjoy it. The edges of book blocks have been used as canvases for decorations and manuscript titles since the Middle Ages. The images on the left show two 15th century volumes featuring titles written on the fore-edge, top picture, or the tail edge, bottom picture. On the right, we have a dozen of fore-edges painted by Cesare Vecellio in the late 16th century. They were part of a series of 172 paintings commissioned by the Pilone family, based in Belluno, Italy. The scenes represent either the volume's author or subject. The practice took a different direction in the mid-17th century, in England, when the artists started to paint with the volumes held in wooden presses, with the boards open, and book blocks bent, squeezed, and fanned out to reveal a tiny area of the fore-edge of each page. If the fore-edges were also gilded, the decorations were now magically hidden when the books were shut. The picture on the left shows an early example created by the Lewis brothers, bookbinders in London. The image in the center portrays Martin Frost working in his studio. Accredited with more than 3,500 paintings, he is arguably the most famous fore-edge painter in activity. The table on the right, edited in 2017 by the UK Heritage Crafts Association, lists the craft of fore-edge painting as critically endangered, with only a few professionals left and sadly zero trainees. Since fore-edge painting is essentially an English art form, it's reasonable not to expect much higher numbers if the survey were conducted worldwide. In 2017, the archivist of the Loyola-Notre Dame Library contacted our department asking for suggestions on how to display fore-edge paintings. Having no immediate answers but wanting to help and spotting a rare opportunity to tackle a new problem, I boldly offered to produce the supports they needed. These are a couple of images of the exhibit I helped to prepare. The displayed items belong to the Marion and Henry J. Knott fore-edge painting collection that was donated to the Loyola Notre Dame Library in 1974. It consists of more than 300 volumes dating from the 16th to the 20th century. The exhibition was not only meant to celebrate their collection, but was integral part of an art history class at Loyola University, Maryland. The students co-curated it. To display fore-edge paintings, the volumes need to be locked in the same arrangement used to produce them. This is problematic. The bindings components and book blocks might be more brittle and stiffer due to aging. Wooden presses, like the ones originally used by the artists, might off-gas and don't offer any customization to account for the unique physical and mechanical properties of the artifacts. The direct contact of the paper with the wood is also concerning. Harmful substances might stain or penetrate the paper, and the friction resulting from the contact might abrade the leaves. Moreover, wooden presses are cumbersome and aesthetically troublesome. The two wooden clamps shown here on the left are currently sold by Martin Frost. The more complicated and DIY-looking model, shown on the right, was built by Duane Elefrit, a structural engineer with a hobby of painting fore-edges. It comprises some features, like the spine blocked and laid flat on the press's base and the use of a pipe to shape the book block, that resemble some characteristics of the cradles that I independently created. It's remarkable that, without being a professional conservator, he tried to address some of the preservation issues related to a traditional fore-edge painting press. While appreciating the craft and ingenuity involved in building those presses, I would not recommend them for institutional exhibitions. Martin Frost, in his interview with Jean Bennett, I apologize if I'm mispronouncing her name, included in her book Hidden Treasures, recommends to not leave a book in such a press for more than a week while painting it, or, quote, perhaps a weekend for displaying purposes. The Loyola-Notre Dame Library exhibition lasted a few weeks. The post-display assessment of the volumes didn't reveal any major change in their condition. It was in line with any other post-display assessment of more common, few months long exhibits of open books. We were able to gently straighten out all book blocks and close all boards without any problem. Before delving into the design of my cradles, I want to show you the only viable display solution for Fore-Edge paintings I was able to find in literature. It's a cradle made of the thermoplastic polymethyl methacrylate, or PMMA, more commonly called acrylic, designed by Chris Clarkson in 1976 and described in his article, The Safe Handling and Display of Medieval Manuscripts and Early Printed Books. He says, quote, the only way I can conceive of displaying such a Fore-Edge painting is to shape the text block around a carefully and individually designed former, so that it displays the Fore-Edge in a more gentle and even way. Then design the cradle to support the book, figure 42, the picture at the top in my slide. In 1976, I made such a cradles in three parts: the former, the cradle, and the text block clip, figure 43, the picture at the bottom. I stumbled across this article only after the Loyola-Notre Dame exhibit took place, while researching about book mounts in general, so, unfortunately, I could not exploit his work. The rough sketch on the top left is the very first visualization of my cradle's design. The priority was to custom bend each book block to reveal the painting and avoid unnecessary distortions. My practical solution consisted of a frame made of 2 millimeters or 0.08 inches thick sheets of polyethylene terephthalate glycol or PETG, commercial name Vivac, with holes drilled through the head and tail walls, in yellow in my 3D drawing, to allow 12.7 millimeters of half an inch PETG tubes, orange in my drawing, to be perpendicularly inserted into those walls. Then, to further customize each individual cradle, bigger tubes, purple in my drawing, of different sizes would have been added to properly guide and lock each book block. I only had a few weeks to make 19 mounts. The design had to be simple and inexpensive. PETG is cheaper and easier to cut and bend than PMMA, and I was already familiar with fabricating with it. Moreover, its practical advantages over PMMA make fabrication mistakes more easily and quickly fixable, and so they do not affect the budget nor disrupt the workflow as much. The choice of PETG was a no-brainer for me. A quick note on plastic materials in general. A few months after the Loyola-Notre Dame exhibit, the PETG sheets and tubes used were audit tested at the Walters Art Museum. While the sheets passed it, the tubes didn't. Unfortunately, simple labels like PETG or PMMA do not necessarily represent identical products. Back to the cradles. The volumes are mounted on them by removing the structural tubes sideways, positioning the volumes in the correct orientation, bending the book block to reveal the painting, and reinserting the structural tubes with, if necessary, the wider shaping tubes. The slight tensions created within the structure by the book block trying to spring back keeps all components locked in position. No strapping is required. For the lack of time, only the main features common to all cradles will be further discussed in the next slides. Starting with those affecting the binding components. The board facing the bottom of the painting is open to no more than 90 degrees. The other board remains closed. The spine lays flat on the cradle and is trapped between the bookblock shaping tube and the closed board. If necessary, a piece of cross-linked low-density polyethylene foam, commercial name Volara, is added underneath the open board to compensate for the shoulder's height. These features aim to minimize the involvement of the binding structure in the display arrangement. In fact, the spine and one board do not move at all. There are a couple of positive consequences stemming from this conservative approach. The closed board is fully exposed, adding content to the display and providing a more complete vision of the artifact. And the footprint of the cradle is minimal, basically equal to the area occupied by one board and the spine. Switching now on the features affecting the book blocks. If necessary, a wider tube is included between the open boards and the book blocks to provide a support that would gently guide each book block into its ideal bent conformation. This shaping tube is either secured around a smaller structural tube, like in the examples on the left, or added loosely, like in the examples on the right. To counteract the book blocks springing back, another structural tube is secured above the shaping tube to act as a stopper. Its position is dictated by the unique characteristics of each individual book block. Finally, to counteract gravity pulling the fore-edges down, an additional support is added underneath the painting, in different ways. The fore-edge shown in the picture at the top left is supported by another structural tube. The one shown in the top right picture is supported by the board open to circa 45 degrees. Finally, the picture at the bottom shows a couple of fore-edges supported by a piece of Vivac, Z-shaped in these cases, trapped underneath the shaping tubes. All cradles share the features just described. The next slides include a few special cases worth showing. The first is a vertically painted fore-edge. This item required an additional S-shaped piece of Vivac to tilt the main standard fore-edge cradle forward and improve the visibility of the artwork. This is a split double fore-edge painting executed by dividing the book block into roughly equal halves painted in opposite directions. The general cradle had to be modified to account for the increased complexity. To improve the visibility of all components, including the rather elaborate inner boards, both boards were open to 90 degrees, and the tilting forward angle was embedded into the main cradle design. A few more details about this cradle. The frame was formed by 4 pieces of Vivac joined together with polycarbonate bolts and nuts. The tubes are kept in position by the tensions created by the book block springing back and by the friction resulting from their contact with the frame's walls. Finally, these 3 cuties are miniature books. The overall cradle structure remained the same, except for the smaller tubes used. The paintings represent 3 sports. From the top, fencing, boxing, and archery. With this list of precious resources, I end my presentation. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.